What's up guys, ISHIZU here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we are doing a very anticipated deck. We know that this particular deck in the OCG took the OCG by storm, it was tier 0, and with the release of Magnificent Mavens, we now have the Ishizu cards. Now let's see exactly what these cards do and how they can help the already existing decks become even more broken. And today we are profiling the one deck that they have the most synergy with, and it's Tearlaments. So everyone that has been keeping up with the OCG even a little bit already knows about this deck, and now let's see exactly how this deck is going to transition in the TCG and just how broken it's going to be. So before we begin with the video, if you enjoyed, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and now let's get to the deck profile. So let's start with the Ishizu cards. First we have 3 copies of Dora the Cestus Oracle. So the Ishizu cards can be categorized in 2 different categories. We have 6 of them, 2 copies of 3 cards that are Enablers, and 2 copies of 3 cards that are Millers. So let's start with the Enablers. So Mudora is a card that you can discard another fairy monster, another earth fairy monster, to special summon this card, and then you can place a Gravekeeper's Trap from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone. This is the continuous trap we're going to talk about a little later. And also this card has a quick effect that can banish this card from your field or your graveyard to target up to 5 cards in any graveyard. You shuffle them into the deck, and if Exchange of the Spirit is not on your field or in your graveyard at the activation, you can target only up to 3 cards. So this card is a free level 4 monster that you can special summon on the field, that it gets you a card that is going to search more cards from this engine, and the graveyard effect slash on-field effect, but most of the times you're going to be using this effect from the graveyard. It's really good to counter matchups like the mirror match or anything else that relies on graveyard, because you banish it and you bounce back into the deck cards like Tearlaments that are trying to activate in the grave and just remove the grave. They are not going to be able to fuse. So this card is not only an enabler, but it also has really good disruption effect in the graveyard. So yeah, this card is really broke. Next we have 3 copies of Keldo the Possessed Statue. This is the other enabler, so it has the same summoning condition as Dora. You send another Earth Fairy from your hand to the grave and just special summon it, and then you can add 1 Exchange of the Spirit or 1 card that mentions Exchange of the Spirit from your deck to your hand, and it has the exact same second effect. You can banish it from your field or grave as a quick effect to target 3 cards in the graveyard by bounce them back to the deck, or if you have Exchange of the Spirit in the grave, you can target up 5 cards instead. So these 2 cards are the bodies that you're going to be special summoning on the field. You're going to be discarding either other copies of themselves or the Millers into the graveyard to summon them. You're going to get your pluses, and then you're going to use them for XYZ or Synchro plays, and that is going to not only enable you more plays that the deck not really have very easy access for, but it also enables your engine because you can mill cards with the Millers, and that's how you get to your Tearlament engine. So let's get to the other 2 cards that we have in the engine. First we have 3 copies of Yugioh the Ancient Sentry. So if a card is sent from the hand or deck to your opponent's graveyard, this card can special summon itself from the hand, and then you can special summon a level 4 Earth Fairy from your graveyard. So this effect is not the most important effect, which is why this card is the one card that you might see less copies of in builds, and I can understand why you would want to play less, make space. This is a 45 card deck, and if you want to play less than 45, then you have to cut some cards, and this is one of them that you can cut to 2 or even 1 copy sometimes. But I feel like the more cards you play out of this engine, the more chances you have of actually drawing 2 of them, because drawing just 1 is not going to cut it, because even though you can mill them with the Tearlaments, you will not be able to summon them from the hand and use their effects, so you need to draw them with another one of the pieces in order to discard them to special summon Dora or Keldo. So this is why I play 3 copies of this card. The effect you care about is that if this card is sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, both players send the top 5 cards of their decks to the grave, and if you have Exchange of the Spirit in the graveyard, you can then choose 1 player, either you or your opponent, to send 5 more cards to the grave. So I am playing Exchange of the Spirit in this build. I know that some OCG list had cut Gravekeeper's Trap with Exchange of the Spirit, but I feel like you get so much advantage just by playing Gravekeeper's Trap with Exchange of the Spirit, and it's not just because of these extra effects, it's because Gravekeeper's Trap on its own is an amazing card. So with Exchange of the Spirit in the list, this card can potentially sometimes either get you so many mills that you're going to get insane advantage, or if you don't need to do that and your first 5 cards that you mill are already good enough, you can mill 10 cards out of your opponent's deck, and potentially by looping these cards, you can even deck your opponent out. So yeah, this deck does have pretty much anything that you could ask for, which is why it's so powerful. And now let's talk about the card that is the best miller. We have 3 copies of Kelbeck the Ancient Vanguard. Now this card, not only does it have the same milling effect that a Yugioh has, but it also has a really hand effect. So if a card is sent from the hand or deck to your opponent's graveyard, you can target one of your opponent's special summon monsters, you special summon this card from your hand, and then you bounce the targeted monster to the hand. So this card helps you play on turn 0, and it's also a card that enables your melee. So that's why it's much better than a Yugioh, and you would never see less than 3 copies of this card. This card is the only one that is basically always at 3. A Yugioh, even though it went to 1 in the OCG, it did not make that much of a difference because they basically hit the card that some people were already playing 1. The limiting of other cards will help much more. But again, Kelbeck, you are never going to play less than 3. A Yugioh, you can cut numbers, but Kelbeck is so powerful that you want want to max it out for sure. Now, moving on to the Tearlament part of the deck, we have 3 copies of Rhino Heart. The normal summons of the deck have increased just a little bit because there is one card that is so broken with Ishizu cards, but even though we do play an extra normal summon, maxing out on Rhino Heart is still really important because Rhino Heart is not just the normal summon of the deck, it's a card that can mill and then you can even special summon its own effect, and you need it as material for Kaleido Heart, which is the boss monster of the deck. So yeah, we are playing this card at 3, even though we do play another normal summon now in deck. We play 3 copies of Sirin. This card is the card that can special summon from the hand by sending another monster from your hand to the graveyard and then mill 3 cards. Being able to send the Ishizu cards to the grave means that you're going to get even more mills. Before, you would have to pop Kalos with her own effect in order to get mill 5, but now you can even mill up to 15 cards in a single turn because of these cards, which is absolutely absurd. You're going to go through all 3 names for Tearlaments pretty much every single turn consistently because of the Ishizu cards, so you can get all the monsters you want field and basically make boards that your opponent is just not going to be able to play around. And Sirin is a card that is going to give the extender. It's also a level 4 monster, which is really good to be able to go with cards like a Beast Dweller, so yeah, she's really good. We have 3 copies of Havnis. Havnis is the card that helps you play on turn 0 when your opponent activates a monster effect on the field. You special summon her from the hand and mill 3 cards. And of course, these 2 Tearlaments monsters, along with the next one, all have the effect that when they send to the grave, you can shuffle back monsters, including themselves, to the bottom of the deck, so you can fusion summon. But I'm pretty sure everyone already knows about that if you've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for the past months. And we have 3 copies of Merly. Merly is a card when it's summoned, you mill the top 3, and again, it has the fusion effect. She's the card that's going to be summoning most of the times with Kalos, and all these cards in combination with these Ishizu cards can mill so many cards that is actually absurd, because I don't know how Konami thought that the Ishizu cards were an okay engine to release in the game, because I'm pretty sure they already knew that Tearlaments were a thing when they were creating these cards, so yeah, the synergy between these 2 archetypes is absolutely insane. Now let's get into some other monsters that are really Ishizu cards. First, we have 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald. This card not only enables the Ishizu cards by being able to send a fairy from deck or extra the grave, so you can send a Jid or Kelbeck to mill 5, but also by sending one of those monsters, this card becomes level 6 and it's a tuner monster. So being able to special summon Mudora, Keldo, or even Seren on the field, then you can go into Baron de Flor. So the deck can even play around Nibiru now. This is something that the deck could not really do very well before, but because of this card and because the card I'm going to show you right after, the deck can even play around Nibiru. So yeah, Diviner is such a broken card, and going second, if you don't need to mill, you can even send NTSS from the extra deck to the graveyard to pop a card, to bait interruptions, destroy floodgates, and everything else you want. We're playing 3 copies of Herald of Orange Light. Everyone knows how broken this card is in fairy decks, and in this particular deck it's even more broke, because if you discard a Jido or Kelbeck with this card, not only are you negating and destroying a monster effect, but you are also getting to mill 5 cards, and if you start milling your Tearlaments, you're going to be able to do so much even on your opponent's first turn. If you activate this and you mill 2 Tearlaments, you can go into Kalos, and then you can send another one, go into Augustapelia, so you're getting 2 interruptions out of absolutely nothing. So yeah, this card, if you draw it with one of the Millers, is really good, but even if you draw it just with a Mudora or a Keldo, it's still really good because these monsters do have utility in the graveyard to disrupt even further. So this is why Herald of Orange Light is the only hand trap we're playing, and it's the best hand trap that you can play in this deck. But in the theme of hand traps, there are some other cards in the current meta right now that kind of treated as hand traps. So we are playing the Bestial Pack. We have 2 copies of Bestial Magnamut. You can play 3 if you want, but I just didn't really want to play too many cards. If you play 3, you're going up to 46, which would be fine, but I feel like 2 copies is enough because it's a card that you can use very quickly because you are thinning out your deck a lot, so you can very easily draw this card. And because of the Ishizu cards, you can, even if you mill all of your copies, you can just put them back into your deck with Mudora or Keldo. You don't have to shuffle your opponent's cards only back into the deck, you can even shuffle your own cards. So even if you mill your Bestial Engine, you can put it back into the deck, and because you're milling so much, you're going to thin your deck very quickly, so you're going to draw them eventually. So yeah, playing 2 copies of Magnamut, I feel is okay, and Magnamut is the one that searches a dragon during the end phase, and you can summon it by banishing a light or a dark in either graveyard. It becomes a quick effect if your opponent has a monster on the field, so this is why I said that these can kinda categorize as hand traps, because you can use them as a type DD Crow. And the card you're going to be searching is the 1 copy of Bestial Druid Worm. This card helps you go into pretty much anything that you need to be able to go into Link monsters, and also get disruption on top of it, because if this card is sent to the grave field, you can target one of your opponent's special summon monsters, and you can send it to the grave. So yeah, these cards, they work really well together in any light or dark deck, or even in any deck in general. If you know that you're playing against Tearlaments, they can be really good because you can summon them regardless of what typing you're playing. So yeah, these cards are really good, and there's a reason everyone is playing them right now. Now, moving on to the spell cards, we have 3 copies of Perlerino. That's pretty standard, I think. You need to play 3 copies. It's a card that not only gets you access to pretty much any Tearlament 1, but it also pops cards when you card back bottom deck. We play 1 copy of Tearlament Scream. This is a new card that we got in Darkwing Blast, and it's really good because whenever your opponent summons a monster, you can mill the top 3 cards of your deck, and also so you can decrease your opponent's attack points by 500 for all the monsters they have. And if this card is sent to the grave by a card effect, you can add a Tearlament trap from your deck to your hand, so you can even add your Salic to your hand. So yeah, this card, if it sticks on the field, you're going to mill even more cards, and it's also going to make your opponent's monsters weaker, which is really important, especially in the mirror match, because when you have the same monsters as your opponent, you want yours to be stronger, and this is how you do it with this card, which is why this card helps a lot in the mirror match. We play one copy of Instant Fusion because this card gets you access to Kit Kalos, and Kalos on her own can do so much. Play one copy of Foolish Burial. This is a grave-based deck. You need to send as many cards to the grave as possible, and even though you can mill so many cards, I still feel like getting the card you need specifically with Foolish is very, very important. We play one copy of Terraforming to get access to our Perlerino. We play one copy of Galaxy Cyclone because Mystic Mine is still a thing. Unfortunately, Mystic Mine did not get banned in the previous ban list, so we still need to play an out, and because we mill so many cards, playing one copy of Galaxy Cyclone can be really decent just to have an out and not auto-lose to Mystic Mine. And we play one copy of Call by the Grave because this deck is going to become so popular after the Ishizu cards have been official in a couple days, so yeah, we need to play cards, and Call by the Grave is already broken, but it's going to be even more broken because of this engine. Now, let's move on to the traps. The next two cards I'm going to show you, some people are not going to play, but I just feel like the fact that this deck is going to be basically the most popular deck in the format, you need to play these two cards just to be able to have a free ride against the mirror match, because if you're playing these cards and your opponent doesn't, then there's pretty much no way you're going to lose. So we play one copy of Gravekeeper's Trap. I talked about this card when I was talking about Mudora. It's a card that you can set from your deck face up with Dora when it's summoned, and this card says that while the Exchange of the Spirit is in your graveyard, your opponent cannot activate card effects in the graveyard or special summon monsters from graveyard. This effect alone is a good enough reason for me to play this card in the deck. This card is a Watching Abyss Dweller that is going to stay on the field, and it also has effect that during the main phase you can discard a card to add a Gravekeeper's monster which we're not playing, or an Earth Fairy monster from your deck to your hand, and during your opponent's draw phase, before they draw, you can declare one card name, and if you guess it correctly, they send the declared card to the graveyard. This third effect, it's kind of random. You don't play anything that is going to let you look at your opponent's deck before they draw, but if you know that you're losing to a specific card, for example, if you have a really big board and you know you're going to lose a card like Dark Ruler no more, you can just call it. You're not losing anything if you call it wrong, and if you call it right, you can sometimes save yourself from loss if your opponent top decks a card like that. The second effect gives you access to the Millers every single turn, and searching Kelbeck means that you're going to be able to search more interruption. But the first effect is what you're looking for with this card, because you can search Exchange of the Spirit very, very easily with Keldo, and then you can send it to the graveyard with this card to search, or you can even mill Exchange of the Spirit, so you can use the first effect very, very consistently and basically lock your opponent's graveyard out completely. So yeah, this card is real. Speaking of the Exchange of the Spirit, we do play one copy. You are never going to pretty much resolve this card's field effect. If you're playing like a pure Ishizu build, which the main focus was to deck out your opponent, then yes, that's when you want to try to resolve the field effect of this card. The main reason you play this card is to get to the graveyard so you can use the extra effects of your cards, and mainly the extra effect, Gravekeeper's Trap. And the last card in the main deck is one copy of Salic. You don't really need to play more copies because with the effect of all the other cards you have that you can use to mill, you're going to get access to it very, very easily. And also, Kelbeck has an effect that I forgot to mention, that the effect that can use to mill, if you have Exchange of the Spirit in the grave, you can set a trap card from your graveyard to your field, so you can basically keep using Salic over and over again to get the impermanence effect. So this deck does not really even lose to cards like Dark Ruler no more because of Kelbeck and Salic, because you are not relying only on your on-field monsters. Even Herald of Orange Light and the Bestial monsters can count as interruptions, so even if you get Dark Ruler, most of the times you will have at least one more interruption in your hand or either on your field in the form of Salic, so you can still play even though your monsters have been negated. So yeah, this card, you mill it, you get a search, you set it back over and over again with Kelbeck, and you can negate the effects. Moving on to the extra deck, we have one copy of Kit Kalos. You don't really need to play more than one. You're going to shuffle this back into your extra deck over and over again with the Tearlament monsters because you're going to use it as fusion material for the next cards I'm going to show you. So just one copy is perfect. You can recycle her every single time. And the extra deck right now, because of some new cards that we have gotten in Darkwing Blast, is tighter than before. So you really need to make space for other cards. One of those new cards that we got in Dark Blast is one copy of Tearlament Kalos. So this card is a monster that requires Kit Kalos and a Tearlaments monster, and it's a card that prevents your opponent's effects that would special summon a monster. It negates them, and also it's basically similar to Masquerade. If this fusion summon card is sent to the grave by a card effect, you can special summon it backfield, so your opponent has to deal with this card twice. So it's a really good addition to the extra. We also play one copy of Kaleido Heart. This is the big boss of the deck. It used to be before and is still the best card in the extra deck because this card just keeps giving you more and more interruption. When it's summoned or when an Aqua monster is sent to the grave by a card effect, you can target one card your opponent controls, you shuffle into the deck. If this card is sent to the grave by a card effect, you special summon it and you send a Tearlaments from your deck to the grave. So yeah, this card is very difficult to deal with. It gives you interruption. It's very easy to summon with all the mills, and it's a card that is going to give you all the advantage that you want throughout a duel and especially throughout the grind game. And we play one copy of Dragostapelia. Of course, these three fusion monsters means that you can recycle your hit Kalos 3 times throughout a duel to keep using her and getting more interruption on the... We are playing one copy of NTSS. I talked about this. Diviner gives you this option, so in any deck that you're playing Diviner, you basically want to have this card in the extra deck, just because going second, it's very, very powerful. You're getting a level 6 tuner on the field that you can use for Baron afterwards, and you're also able to pop a card and bait interruption. For the XYZ monsters, we have one copy of Abyss Dweller. In case you cannot get access to Gravekeeper's Trap, this is the best next thing, of course, and all these Ishizu Enabler cards are free level 4 special summons, so it's never been more easy than now to summon this card in the deck. So yeah, it's a really powerful card, not just against Tearlaments, but against a lot of other decks as well. We are playing one copy of Time Thief Redoer. Redoer is the monster you're summoning when you're trying to go for Zeus, and even against trap decks, this card can be really good, because sometimes you can struggle against Floodgates, but because you have Redoer being able to steal traps out of your opponent's top deck and use it as basically a compulsory effect, you will be able to have a free matchup against decks like Eldritch if they don't see skill drain or something like that, and because it's a big monster, you can run over something and then go into your one copy of Divine Arsenal Zeus Sky Thunder right here, which we all know that going second, Zeus is a beast, and because of all these level 4 extenders, it's very easy to summon Redoer, attack on something, summon Zeus, wipe the board, and then keep playing. We are playing one copy of Baron de Fleur. I mentioned that it's very easy to summon because of Diviner. She becomes level 6 tuner monster when you send level 4 monster to the grave. All you need then is a level 4 extender, either being Dora, Keldo, or even Sherin, and then you can go into this card, which is why the deck, along with Herald of Oran's Light, now it has tools to even play around Nibiru. And for the Link monsters, first we have one copy of Sprite Elf. Being able to bring back Merely from the graveyard during your opponent's turn means that gives you even more cards to basically interrupt your opponent. We are playing one of the new cards. We're playing one copy of Sprite Sprain. This card is a new Link monster that Sprites got in Darkwing Blast, and this deck can use it very easily as well, and it's a card that is basically a Foolish Burial from the deck for a level 2 monster, so you're going to send your Merely to the grave, you're going to mill cards, and also, if another monster is special summoned while this card is on the field, you can detach a material for an XYZ monster you control, target one monster on the field and return to the hand, and because the deck does play XYZ monsters, you can even use this disruption effect on the card as well. We are playing one copy of Dark the Dark Charmer. In any format, that the Dark deck is one of the top 3 decks, I would say. You need to play this card in pretty much any deck that can make it, and Tearlaments are definitely going to be the most played deck moving forward, so yeah, this card is really powerful in the deck. We are playing one copy of Masquerena. Sometimes summoning this card, going into a Unicorn your opponent's turn, can seal the deal with all interruption the deck has. Speaking of Unicorn, we do play the one copy of Unicorn. This is here mainly for Masquerena. Sometimes you're going to summon this even during your own turn when you're trying to push for game, but the deck doesn't really need all that extra boost power now because of all these new cards. It does have power to basically play around anything, destroy cards, bounce cards, and get beaters on the board, which is why we don't even need to play Access Code Talker anymore. We mainly decide to play another Link 4 monster, which is the one copy of Mech Knight Crusadia Abramax, because you can summon this card with Masquerena, and if you don't need to summon Unicorn and you can summon this card, some decks, if they're not playing a card like Triple Tactics Talent or Droplet, they are not going to have an out to an Abramax that has been summoned with Masquerena becoming indestructible by card effects. So this is why I feel like this card is better than Access Code, because Access Code is not necessary in Modern or Go for Game. The deck can do so much damage on its own, so playing this card means that you're going to win some other matchups that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So yep, that's the deck, guys. You can expect to see this deck everywhere very, very soon, and even if this engine is not being played in Tearlaments, some people might even decide to side the enabler cards, Mudora and Keldo, as options to be able to play around Tearlaments, because your opponent is going to mill cards from your own deck as well. So if they mill these cards from your deck, you can then use their graveyard effects to bounce back their monsters from the graveyard, play around Tearlaments. So this is another strategy that you can use. So this engine is going to be everywhere, either to enable Tearlaments or counter Tearlaments. So yeah, it's going to be very, very popular, and we're going to see exactly how Konami is going to deal with this down the road, but that's a long time away from us now because the engine is fairly new, so we're going to have to get adjusted to it and get used to it for quite a while. So yep, that's it, guys. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.